Charles Pascalite.
That's
Mr.
right.
Jim Mars.
Go Panthers. Thank you, Ken, and welcome, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces, so this is great because I'm here with the home folks, so to speak. I have been told by more than one person that my book, Alien Agenda, and if you have the slightest interest at all in UFOs, that's the one to get, because I've been told that it is the top-selling nonfiction book on UFOs in the world. So that's pretty cool. I like that. What's really amazing is that although that was written back in the 90s, except for a few things, the Phoenix flyover, the Stephenville flap that y'all probably remember, I don't know, the thing at O'Hare Airport, one or two other things. Everything else, because that happened after it was published. But aside from those more recent things, everything in there is still valid. It's, the history, the background, the cover-ups, Project Sign, everything else. It's all very real. So if you have friends that decide they'd like to know a little bit about the UFOs, tell them to get Alien Agenda. But today we're going to talk, since we've just coming off the 50th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination. And y'all are going to have to pardon me, but my head's like a balloon. I am not ill. I feel fine. But I feel like there's a balloon inside my head, and I've been snotty all morning, so I apologize. I've sent out for some antihistamine, so maybe if you get really bored, I'll join you and sleep.
Don't share it.
Okay. Now, a lot of you probably have been curious. I know you have, because I don't care where you stand, everyone's always fascinated with the Kennedy assassination. And there's a reason for this, because number one, we all love a good mystery, and it is a mystery. The one thing everyone can agree on is that the Kennedy assassination is controversial. Well, I submit to you, no, it's not. It only appears controversial because there is such a wide gap between those who have believed the government pronouncements and those who have actually studied the case. An example of a true controversy would be, say, the debates over abortion. That's a true controversy because in that case you have equal numbers of educated, thoughtful, concerned people who all look at the same information and they just can't agree on the meaning of this information. In the case of the Kennedy assassination, though, again, we've been given pronouncements backed by little and nothing, and then there are the facts of the case. You could spend the rest of your life reading and studying about the Kennedy assassination. There's just so many aspects to it. What he did, what he didn't do, what he might have done, his love affairs, the personalities involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this, of course, throws the average person into confusion because you got one expert says one thing, another expert says another. The medical evidence is in total disarray. And even the experts can't agree. So I'm going to try to cut through all that today. We're going to talk about, here's all you need to know about the Kennedy assassination. For years I've been asked, will we ever know the truth about what happened to Kennedy? And I'm here to tell you that they're not asking the right question. We know the truth now. The problem is do you want to accept it? Okay? And the thing is, all you need to know is right here. So let's move along. In this case, we're going to find evidence of fabrication of evidence, suppression of evidence, alteration of evidence, destruction of evidence, and intimidation of witnesses. So now we're right back to stage one. Can you even believe the basic evidence? If you choose to believe the pronouncements of the government, that, we've got Oswald's building, we've got Oswald trying to flee the building, we've got Oswald's fingerprints and palm print there found in the building, we've got the rifle and the ballistics match up, and hey, I'm first to admit, a very good case against Lee Harvey Oswald. But When you look closer, it all begins to fall apart. And you cannot trust the basic evidence. Did you bring me a...
That's your resume, is that?
Great.
That's 25 minutes.
Okay, now, when I fall asleep, somebody come up here and shake me. No, I won't. Okay, so let's go down through there, and keep in mind, and I'll reiterate this at the end, that when we're talking about all this, these are crimes. These aren't just aspects of the case. These are criminal activity. Fabrication of evidence. Well, on Monday night, after the Friday assassination, Henry Wade, the district attorney in Dallas, had a press conference and almost offhandedly said, "Oh, have I mentioned we've got his fingerprints on the rifle?" Hey, that pretty well took care of that, right? He did it, fingerprints on the rifle. But let's look closer. That evening of the assassination, that Friday, against legal precedents, against the law, quite illegally, based on pressure from Washington, the Dallas police were forced to turn over all of the evidence, including the rifle, to the FBI. And they hauled it up to Washington. They kept it through Saturday, Sunday, Monday. In fact, they never even returned it to Dallas. And this is over the objections of the Dallas police. Captain Fritz, who was in charge of the investigation, says, "I need to have people to identify the weapon. I need to get people to do this and that. How can I conduct an investigation when you're taking away all the evidence?" And this is really, really critical to understand, because this means the FBI had the evidence starting about midnight Friday night through Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then on Tuesday, there was a meeting in the morning between the district attorney, the FBI, Dallas police, and the DPS. And they announced that they had invited the FBI into the case. And they even, I can remember the news stories where they were carrying boxes out of the police station, and it was like they suddenly got all the evidence. They already had it. All those days with no chain of evidence, no oversight, nobody knew what they were doing with it. They could have put anything in it. They could have taken anything out of it. But the key thing is that on Saturday we've got this document signed by Jagger Hoover himself that states no latent prints of value were developed on Oswald's revolver, cartridge cases, unfired cartridge, clip of the rifle, or even the inner parts of the rifle. No fingerprints on Saturday. On Sunday, the rifle was shipped back to Dallas, and on Monday morning, FBI agents Harrison and Vincent Drain carried the rifle over to Miller Funeral Home in Fort Worth, where they were preparing Oswald's body for burial. This old Fort Worth press story says FBI team with a camera and a crime lab kit spent a long time in the morgue. Paul Grudy, who turned out to be a good friend of mine, was the funeral director there at Miller Funeral Home, and told me years and years ago, and reiterated this. He died like a couple of years ago, but right before he died, he was on national radio, said the same thing all over again. He was there when the FBI put Oswald's dead hand on the rifle. And he said, he told me he had a heck of a time getting that black fingerprint ink off of Oswald's dead hand in time for the burial. So, and then that night they say, "Oh, and we mentioned we got his fingerprints on the rifle." Now I ask you, is that legitimate evidence? No. Next, we find that they claim that they found 2 empty shell cases on the 6th floor of the scuba depository and 1 live round in the rifle. This is confirmed, as you'll see in a little bit, by the Dallas Police evidence sheet, which originally showed they only had 2 shell cases. But they needed 3 shots to fit within the time frame and to explain 2 hits to Kennedy and Connolly and a miss that nicked James Tague. So, after a few days, this 3rd shell casing turns up. The Dallas policeman said, "Oh, well, I carried it around in my pocket. I didn't think it was really important." What I would point out is you can notice there's a little indentation on the shoulder of these 3 these two shell casings in this live round. The FBI said this was a peculiarity of Oswald's rifle. When you jam the bullet in there into the chamber, it dented the shell casing shoulder a little bit. You'll notice on the third shell casing, there is no such dent, in fact, but it does have a nick up at the top. So obviously this is pretty flaky evidence, and they're fabricating evidence. Okay, now we got these two FBI documents that look like they're the same document. In fact, they're signed by Vincent Drain, and it's the same file number, same date. And one of them was released in 1968, which states that the paper was studied by the FBI laboratory and found to have the same observable characteristics as the paper bag shaped like a gun case, which was found near the place of the shooting on the 6th floor of the book depository. In other words, there was wrapping paper available at the school book depository, and they said it matched the paper of the gun case they said that Oswald used to smuggle the gun into the building. Well, that's pretty incriminating. But in 1980, this document slips out, and it says the paper was studied by the FBI laboratory and found not to be identical with the paper gun case found at the scene of the shooting. Wait a minute. One says one thing, one says the diametric opposite. So, which is it? In this case, the FBI was actually queried about this, and an FBI spokesman said, well, this is a phony document. Phony document? How many other phony documents are in FBI files, and who would know whether it's phony or not? Fabrication of evidence. Y'all didn't see this story. I had to finally find this, even though it was a Reuters news service article. I had to go find a copy of the Seattle Times to find this story, because y'all don't get told this. Pictured here is Gerald Custer. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He's not an author. He was the Bethesda technician who took the x-rays of President Kennedy. And he held a news conference back in 1992 along with Floyd Reeby, who was not a conspiracy author. He was the photographer who took the autopsy photographs of President Kennedy. And both of these men then and now say that the autopsy photographs and the x-rays that we are being shown, that Vincent Bugliosi bases his whole conclusions on, are fake x-rays. Floyd Reeby said these photographs are phony and not the photographs we took. Now, I ask you, who could put phony autopsy photographs of the president in the National Archives? Could Oswald have done that? No, he's dead. How about Castro? Oops, wait a minute, he's dead too. How about Khrushchev? No, he's dead. Wait a minute, who could be doing this, and how come that this is not known except by the people who actually took the x-rays and the photographs? Suppression of evidence. For example, here we see one of the x-rays that they're still showing in the National Archives, and it's obvious that there seems to be, the whole front part of his head's missing, and yet in the autopsy photographs we find there's nothing wrong with his forehead. Again, alteration, suppression. And of course, this is because they have to cover up the fact of the single bullet theory. Early on the Monday following the assassination, the idea was, according to the FBI, that 3 shots were fired. 1 shot hit Kennedy in the back. 1 shot hit Connolly, caused his wounds. 3rd shot hit Kennedy in the right-hand side of the head and killed him. Fairly believable scenario. But then they had a problem because James Tague, who was the 3rd man wounded in Dealey Plaza, who was standing down near the triple underpass near Main Street, a bullet hit the curb near his feet and threw up pieces of metal or concrete and nicked him on the cheek. Now, he was not named in any reports of that day, but there were 2 separate reports, one by a deputy sheriff and one by a policeman, that mentioned a bystander had been wounded on the cheek. Well, James Tague says, hey, I was wounded in the shooting too. I think they need to hear what I have to say. But the Warren Commission ignored him.